Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The first warning didn't come from my wife. It came from an email sent at 2:17 a.m. No subject line, just a forwarded calendar invite labeled Executive Restructuring, Confidential. I stared at my phone in the dark. My wife, Lena Carlisle, asleep beside me, her back turned, her breathing steady like nothing in the world was wrong. The glow from the screen painted her face in pale blue light, and for a split second, I wondered how long she'd been sleeping like that, peaceful, while my life was being quietly rearranged behind my back. I didn't open the attachment yet. I already knew. For weeks, something had been off. Not dramatic, not obvious, just calculated. Late nights that didn't add up. Conversations she stepped away to take. A new perfume she claimed was just a sample from the office. Less eye contact, less touch, less us. Lena used to talk to me about everything: strategy, stress, ambition, fear. Lately, she spoke in summaries, bullet points, corporate tone, like I was no longer a partner, just someone she reported to. I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling, memories pressing in. I remembered when her father, Charles Carlisle, first shook my hand. His grip had been firm, testing. His eyes sharp, measuring whether I was another temporary man in his daughter's life or someone permanent. You don't marry into this family without responsibility, he told me once. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you trusted. I'd taken that seriously. I gave the company years. Missed holidays. Postponed vacations. Took blame for decisions I didn't make to protect the board's image. I stayed invisible while Lena rose. Presentation after presentation. Promotion after promotion. Standing taller each time. And I was proud of her. God, I really was. But pride can blind you. The next morning, Lena kissed my cheek quickly while tying her hair back. Long day, she said. Board stuff. I nodded, pretending not to notice she didn't ask about my schedule. At work, the silence was louder than any argument. People avoided my eyes. My assistant hesitated before speaking, like she was afraid of saying the wrong thing to someone already marked. By noon, I was called into a small conference room. Not the boardroom. Not yet. 2 attorneys. 1 HR director. Neutral faces. Polite smiles. We're just here to clarify boundaries, one of the lawyers said smoothly, to avoid any overlap that could raise concerns. Concerns about what? I asked. Influence, he replied. That word again. They slid documents across the table. Formal language. Clean formatting. My name mentioned often, always in the past tense. I was being removed. Slowly. Surgically. With smiles. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I simply stood, thanked them for their time, and walked out before they could see the crack forming behind my ribs. That evening, I didn't go home right away. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, replaying every red flag I'd ignored. Every night, she'd come home distant. Every time she dismissed my concerns as insecurity. Every time she mentioned a consultant named Marcus Reed, a man whose name suddenly appeared far too often in internal emails. I pulled up the company records on my tablet, not out of panic, out of instinct. And that's when I saw it. Not the press releases, not the titles, the shareholder registry. My name, repeated, percentages that didn't lie. Numbers that didn't bend for ambition or betrayal. I exhaled slowly, the corners of my mouth lifting, not in joy, but in understanding. Lena thought power came from visibility. She forgot where real control was buried. And tomorrow, when she walked into that boardroom confident and untouchable, she was going to learn something she never expected from the man she tried to erase. I didn't confront Lena that night. That's what she expected me to do. Storm in. Demand answers, accuse her of things she'd already decided to deny. Instead, I did something far more dangerous. I listened. I cooked dinner. I asked about her day. I watched the way her eyes lit up when she mentioned Marcus Reed, how she said his name too easily, like it had already become part of her daily rhythm. Marcus thinks the market's ready for expansion, she said, twirling pasta around her fork. He's sharp, knows how to read people. I nodded. Sounds like someone you trust. Her smile was small but satisfied. I do. That was confirmation enough. Later, When she fell asleep with her phone face down again, I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I already had what mattered more than messages: patterns. Marcus wasn't just a consultant. He was always there when Lena stayed late. Always copied on emails that should have been internal. Always the last person she mentioned before shutting down emotionally. I remembered something her father once said during a late-night crisis meeting years ago. Power doesn't announce itself. Charles Carlyle had muttered, staring at a spreadsheet. It waits for arrogance to make a mistake. Lena was making plenty. The next morning, I went somewhere she never thought I would. The archives. Most executives don't even know they exist. Old filing rooms tucked beneath the corporate offices, where physical records live because laws demand they do. I greeted Sandra, the record supervisor, by name. She smiled, surprised but warm. "You're not usually down here, Mr. Carlyle." "I'm trying to be more thorough," I said. That wasn't a lie. I spent 3 hours reviewing documents Lena had never bothered to read. Stock transfers from years ago. Deferred compensation agreements. A silent restructuring Charles had done after a brutal health scare, one he never announced publicly. And there it was. Not just shares. Voting rights. Control clauses activated by removal attempts made under conflict-based justification. I leaned back in my chair, heartbeat steady. She hadn't just underestimated me. She hadn't even understood the company she was trying to conquer. That afternoon, I received the official email. Termination of advisory role, effective immediately. No emotion, no explanation, just procedure. I forwarded it to my personal email and replied with a single sentence. Received. Thank you for the clarity. Then I began making calls. Not threats, not accusations, questions. I spoke to Evelyn Hartman, the board chair, casually. Asked about tomorrow's agenda. Mentioned I might stop by. There was a pause on the line. Stop by. Yes, I said evenly. I think it's time I listened instead of advising. She didn't say no. That silence was loud. Lena came home glowing that night. Victory does that to people. It makes them careless. She poured herself a glass of wine and leaned against the counter. Tomorrow's going to be big, she said, finally stepping into what I deserve. I met her eyes. Just make sure you've read everything. She laughed softly. I have lawyers for that. I almost told her then. Almost. But revenge isn't loud. It's patient. Later, when she went to shower, her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't pick it up. I didn't have to. The preview was enough. Marcus, tomorrow changes everything. Can't wait to celebrate after. Celebrate. I deleted nothing. I changed nothing. I just remembered. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was planning. I wasn't the man being removed anymore. I was the man being revealed. Tomorrow, Lena would walk into that boardroom expecting applause, loyalty, control. Instead, she'd be walking into silence, shifting eyes, and a truth she'd helped bury, one that would surface the moment the register was opened. And when it did, there would be no yelling. Just paperwork. Just numbers. Just consequences. The boardroom had always smelled like polished wood and quiet power. That morning, it smelled like tension. I arrived early, not to make a statement, but to observe. I took a seat along the wall, not at the table, not in the shadows either. Somewhere visible enough to unsettle people who thought I was already gone. Conversation slowed when I entered. Lena walked in last. She wore confidence like armor. Tailored jacket, chin lifted, phone already in her hand as if she were conducting business before it began. Marcus Reed followed a step behind her, carrying a slim leather folder, his posture relaxed, almost smug. They didn't look at me. That hurt more than anger ever could. Evelyn Hartman cleared her throat and called the meeting to order. We'll begin with updates regarding executive structure. Lena stood. This company is entering a new phase, she said smoothly. One that requires clarity, unity, and decisiveness. To avoid divided influence, certain advisory roles have been concluded. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. A few heads turned toward me. Others avoided my gaze. Marcus leaned back, arms crossed, as if the outcome was already locked. Then Evelyn adjusted her glasses. Before we proceed, she said carefully, we need to review shareholder positions, particularly in light of recent changes. Lena's smile didn't falter. Of course. That was the moment her confidence became a liability. The screen in the front of the room lit up. Charts. Names. Percentages. I watched her expression shift. Not dramatically. Just enough. The room went silent. Evelyn read aloud. According to the most recent validated registry. She paused. The majority voting interest belongs to Adrian Carlisle. The heir left the room. Marcus straightened. Lena's hand tightened around the edge of the table. That's not possible, she said, voice sharp now. My father transferred control to me. He transferred operational authority, Evelyn replied. Not voting dominance. Lena turned slowly. Her eyes found mine for the first time that morning. I stood. Your father planned for ambition, I said calmly. Just not recklessness. Her face flushed. You manipulated this. I shook my head. I protected it. For years. Quietly. Evelyn looked between us. Mr. Carlisle, as majority holder, your removal would require your own consent. Marcus spoke up then, his tone defensive. This is highly irregular. So was my termination, I replied. Silence. Evelyn nodded once. The board recognizes Adrian Carlisle as acting authority pending review. Lena sank into her chair. The meeting ended in fragments. Half-finished sentences, excuses, urgent whispers. Marcus left first. He didn't look back. Lena stayed behind. The room emptied until it was just us. She finally spoke, her voice brittle. You planned this. No, I said. I survived it. Her eyes glistened. Not with remorse, but with fury. You let them humiliate me. You humiliated yourself, I replied quietly. I just stopped shielding you. She laughed once, hollow. You think this makes you the hero? I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I married. The woman who replaced honesty with strategy. I think this makes me free, I said. By afternoon, the truth traveled faster than any press release. Marcus's consulting contract was suspended. An internal review was opened. Not because I demanded it, but because once power shifted, people suddenly remembered rules. Lena didn't come home that night. I didn't ask where she went. I already knew where we stood. That evening, I sat alone in the house we once planned futures in. I poured a drink and stared out the window, not celebrating, reflecting. Revenge hadn't felt the way I expected. There was no rush, no triumph, just clarity. I hadn't won because I outplayed her. I won because I stayed true to myself while she abandoned everything we were built on. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Public ones, legal ones, emotional ones. But tonight, I let myself breathe. Because the hardest part wasn't reclaiming power. It was accepting that love, once compromised, can't be negotiated back into place. The aftermath didn't explode the way people expect in stories like this. It didn't come with shouting matches or slammed doors. It came quietly, through emails, formal letters, and the sudden distance between names that once appeared together on every document. By morning, the company issued a neutral statement. Nothing dramatic. No accusations. Just a mention of temporary leadership realignment pending internal review. That kind of language can end careers without raising its voice. Lena called me just after sunrise. I let it ring twice before answering. We need to talk, she said, skipping greetings. We already did. I replied calmly. There was silence on the line, then a sharp inhale. You blindsided me. I leaned back in my chair, watching the city wake up through the glass. You removed me from my own life without warning. I just stopped pretending it was mutual. You could have warned me, she said, her voice cracking now. Not with guilt, but with loss of control. We could have handled this privately. That ended when you brought Marcus into our marriage and our business. I said evenly. She didn't deny it. That told me everything. Later that day, the board met again, this time without Lena present. Evelyn Hartman led the discussion carefully, professionally, but the conclusion was inevitable. Lena was placed on extended leave, pending the outcome of the internal review, not because of rumors or relationships, but because she'd violated disclosure policies and attempted to restructure authority without proper approval. Marcus resigned before the review could reach him. People always leave early when they sense the tide turning. I didn't take pleasure in any of it. Power reclaimed doesn't erase emotional wreckage. It just gives you space to face it honestly. That afternoon, I packed a single bag and moved into a quiet apartment downtown. Not to run, to breathe. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to someone else's ambition. I was choosing my own direction. Lena showed up 3 days later. No makeup, no armor. She stood in the doorway, hands clasped, eyes tired. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said. That's the problem, I replied gently. You meant for it to happen at all. She swallowed. I felt invisible next to you, like everything I achieved was somehow shared. I nodded slowly, and instead of telling me, you replaced me. Her eyes filled. I didn't think you'd fight back. I didn't, I said. I stood still. That hurt her more than anger ever could. We didn't argue. We didn't revisit old memories or assign blame line by line. Some betrayals don't need autopsies. They need distance. She left quietly. That was the last time she stood in that doorway. Weeks passed. The company stabilized. New leadership roles were announced. I remained as majority owner, but stepped back from daily operations. Not because I was forced to, but because I chose peace over control. I reconnected with parts of myself I'd neglected. Early morning runs, late night reading, conversations that weren't about strategy or leverage. Power feels different when you don't crave it. One evening, I received an envelope from Charles Carlyle. Inside was a handwritten note. You protected what mattered, even when it cost you. That takes character. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. No apology could fix everything, but acknowledgement matters. The divorce was quiet, fair, clean, no headlines, no drama. We signed papers across a small table. Two people who once believed love could outrun ambition. As I stood to leave, Lena looked up at me. Do you hate me? I considered the question. No, I said honestly, but I don't trust you. She nodded. That was closure enough. Months later, I stood in the same boardroom again, not as a husband, not as an advisor, but as a man who knew exactly who he was. The room felt different now, lighter. When the meeting ended, Evelyn smiled faintly. You handled all of this with restraint. I shrugged. Revenge doesn't have to be loud to be complete. She nodded, understanding. That night, I walked home alone under city lights, not bitter, not broken, stronger. Because real victory isn't proving someone wrong. It's realizing you never needed their approval to begin with. And when I finally closed the door behind me, I didn't feel like a man who lost a marriage. I felt like a man who reclaimed himself.